Welcome back to Still Here. In the last episode, we talked about how dementia affects more than memory, how it can change behavior, emotion, and the way a person experiences the world. Today, I want to talk about something that often unfolds alongside those changes, and something many families feel but don't always have language for: the changing relationship. Dementia doesn't only affect the individual, it reshapes the connection between people. A daughter begins to notice she's making decisions she never had to make before. A spouse finds themselves taking on responsibilities that once felt shared. Small shifts begin to accumulate, and often these changes happen gradually. There isn't a single moment when roles clearly reverse. Instead, there is a slow adjustment, one that can be difficult to name while it's happening. Families often describe a feeling of being in between, still a daughter, but also something more. Still a partner, but in a different way. And that in-between space can bring a mix of emotions. Love, of course, but also grief, responsibility, sometimes frustration, sometimes guilt. But what I want to explore today is what it means to move through that shift, not as a sudden change, but as a process. My mom and I were in the living room, relaxing and watching television. My mom loves a good crime, thriller, and suspense series. She usually knows what to watch, but today, she asked me to choose. I chose something I knew she would like, and we had a good time. Did I think about what just happened? Absolutely, I did. It was not at all dramatic or striking, but it was not usual either. Not wanting to decide what to watch on television is not concerning, but also not her. And as I recall previous situations of having to make decisions, not a lot, but definitely more than previous. Minimal, but recognizable. Then over time, there were more of those. She would ask me to decide on gifts to buy. She would ask me to choose which restaurant to go, and so on. It was not all at once. Not always in a way that was clearly defined. Little things that I did not think were relevant as a discrete episode, but as it accumulated, much as I refused to notice, there was no denying. This shift in expectation was experienced by everyone, not just myself, but my dad, my sisters, and other members of the extended family. Most families describe the same series of events, small steps that expand into bigger decisions, such as managing appointments, managing finances, managing medication, and eventually managing their day-to-day life, as well as their safety. At that point, we also start to manage the complex emotional responses, which could be that of responsibility, grief, guilt. I remember seeing a patient in the office, a 75-year-old gentleman who had dementia. His wife would bring him to his appointments, and she would always talk about the fear that she had about making the wrong decision. She said that since they got married, he was the decision maker. He decided where they settled, what kind of house. Although they discussed their children's affairs together, his opinion always had more weight. She did not resent that. She claims that he was actually good and steady in making decisions. Both of them, including their children, benefited from what he chose to do for their family. But now, she's afraid of making the wrong one. She's afraid of making the wrong decision for him. I am sure she's not the only one. As a relationship begins to shift in dementia, it is common to feel that something important is being lost. In some ways, that's true. There is a change in roles, a change in expectations, a gradual letting go of how things once were. But alongside that, something else is also happening. A different kind of relationship begins to take shape. One that may involve more responsibility, more attentiveness, sometimes more difficulty, but also at times a different kind of closeness. Not the same as before, but not without meaning. Many families move through this quietly, without language for what they're experiencing. They carry the responsibility, the adjustments, the emotions, often without naming them. Part of what I hope this conversation offers is a way to begin naming those changes, so that when the relationship starts to feel different, you can recognize that this too is part of the illness, and that the complexity of what you're feeling, love, grief, responsibility, even moments of frustration, is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a reflection of how much the relationship matters. In the next episode, we'll talk more directly about the experience of a caregiver, what it can feel like, why it can be isolating, what often goes unspoken for those providing care. Thank you for listening to Still Here. Wherever you are in this experience, I hope these conversations bring a little more understanding and remind you that you are not alone in it.